Hey there, folks. This is Stuff and Things review. I'm going to be doing a review on the Stephen King book that I think is a fantastic collection of stories called The Bazaar of Bad Dreams. Now, I have picked about 6 stories that I'm going to briefly be talking about within this, but first, before I get into it, I'd like to just mention that I have a few other older videos if anybody wants to give those a check. They have gone under the old names of Bearded Movie Buff and then Midnight Movie Reviewer. So if you want to give those a check, would be appreciated. And anyways, let's get on to this review. So the first story that I'm going to quickly be giving kind of a quick little summary on is the first story in the book, which is called Mile 81. Basically, what the story is about is it's basically about a smutty station wagon that comes into a rest stop on the main turnpike, mile 81. And basically, what happens is it ends up opening up its door, and there's no one inside the vehicle. The vehicle is actually an extraterrestrial being that eats any sort of people that come driving past and stop to try and give what they assume would be someone who is in trouble a hand, and they end up being eaten. It is amongst many few stories that Stephen King has written about vehicles that are not really needing human beings to operate. It's really, really, really well written, and it uses a kid as the protagonist to basically become the hero. Fantastically written. The whole entire book is just filled with all kinds of wonderful stories. The next story I'm planning on doing is a story entitled Batman and Robin Get Into an Altercation. Basically, this story is about a middle-aged man who visits his father, who suffers from Alzheimer's disease. They basically, twice weekly, they meet up and they go over to the Applebee's restaurant, where they order the same food, that they've had the same conversation that they've been having for the last 3 years. The father keeps mistaken the middle-aged man for his brother, who had died 40 years ago in an accident. Basically, after the middle-aged man and his father leave the restaurant and are driving back to the old folks' home, they get into an accident because the middle-aged man got distracted by unintentional revelation that the father made. The owner of the vehicle that was swerving into the lane that the middle-aged man was in is an ex-convict. You can probably guess where that's going to come in. The middle-aged man gets out of his vehicle, tries to reason with the guy to give him information. The ex-convict is not taking any shit. So he basically gets enraged and starts beating on the middle-aged man. The father finally realizes, comes to his senses for a very rare and brief moment, gets out to intervene, and stabs the ex-convict with a steak knife that he has taken from the Applebee's. This story is such a touching sort of story because it shows kind of a son, a middle-aged son, wanting to still connect with his father who has Alzheimer's and basically constantly forgets who he is on a regular basis. The touching thing is there's one part in the story where the old man, the father, remembers one moment where him and his son, the middle-aged man, dressed up like Batman and Robin for Halloween. It's just a wonderful story. The next story I plan on doing a quick little review on is called A Death. This story, I think, out of the whole entire collection of 20 stories, is a bit of the weakest of the stories. I just found that it had a bit of entertainment, but it just basically was one of those kind of stories that you knew right from the beginning what the end is going to be. And I don't know, some people might like stories like that. I know for me, I like to kind of guess what the ending is going to be like. Anyway, so the story is basically about a man who gets confronted by deputies, police officers, because he is being accused of, and I'm sorry for certain things if this might, for some people, if this might be uncomfortable to hear for this story, but he's being accused of theft and murder and the possibility of something else very, very nasty. With a 10-year-old girl, and the story basically goes on where the man is being sent to jail and questioned, and the man is always constantly saying that he is innocent. The ending is basically, well, I'm not really gonna reveal much, but let's basically just say that that there is a coin involved, and it's basically the main part of generally part of the story. Anyways, so if you want to give that a read, from the story, as much as I say that it's weak, it's still fairly entertaining to read, so I would suggest still giving it a read. The next one I plan on doing is called Afterlife. This one is basically about a man who dies of colon cancer and ends up coming to an office, essentially is an office that's supposed to be either heaven or hell. That the way that it seems like in the story that Stephen King has made is that you can basically interpret how generally it's going to be. It's actually wonderful. I love how this story is written. It's a possibility of what heaven or hell may actually be like, and it might be the possibility of theories that different people can have different sort of heavens and hells depending on what they've done in their lives, the kind of jobs, blah blah blah, all that fun stuff. Anyway, so he gets to this office and he meets this being, another person, who is there because of wrongdoings that he has had, and he basically is now sentenced in a purgatory where he has to basically help other people make a decision, either to go back and relive their entire lives, which is picking one door, which is the left door, or picking a second door, which is the right door, which is basically essentially you go through that door and you no longer fucking exist. It's actually a really, really interesting take on the heaven and hell sort of thing, and judgment kind of thing. I find it really, really entertaining to read this one. So the man who died of colon cancer has basically been explained that he has been to this office several times and has always picked the left door, and he has gone through so many different sort of sins that essentially, basically, it's almost it would be much better if he just picked the right door and just didn't exist. But he always decides to pick the left, and basically it ends with, of course, him picking the left door and once again reliving life. So it sets into the other sort of thing of the whole reincarnation thing. It's just fantastic story, and I suggest giving it a read. I've got two more stories that I've picked. One is, well, it's not really a story, it's more of a poem from the collection. It's called The Bone Church. Basically, it's done in a narration of a first person bar patron who tells an unknown listener memories in exchange for drinks. And basically it goes in, like, the narrator goes into some fairly dark memories and stuff about certain people that have been through a jungle of an unnamed land. The ending story, basically, the ending part of the poem talks about survivors awaiting a very dark, mystical experience. It's an interesting poem. It doesn't follow into much of any sort of rhyme, so it's done in a very free verse sort of style. It's actually really, really cool. And then the last story that I decided to pick to do is a story called Drunken Fireworks. This one I thought was more of a comical story in the collection. The reason why I say that it's comical is because it's a story about two people in like a countryside sort of area across from a lake, and these people go into competition every few nights. I think the first time is around New Year's, I believe, and they get drunk and they set off fireworks, a fireworks show for all the rest of the people that live around this lake area. But then talking about how these people go into competitions, one person tries to go and buy like a big, huge amount of fireworks, the best fireworks, and then gets up one on the other side. The people have even better fireworks, and it's kind of funny. It's also funny, in my opinion, not to say that this is really funny, but how it's described is funny in my opinion, that the so-called protagonist, the main character, and his I believe mother, if I remember correctly, or girlfriend, or something, I think it's mother, they end up getting this really, really big, like really big, amazing, like firework thing. and it's if I remember correctly, it's called Dragon something, or maybe just the Dragon. But anyways, they set it off, and it becomes this big, huge beast of fire, and it ends up going towards the other people's house, and that ends up becoming engulfed in flames, and it's a very entertaining story. Um, Now, in my opinion, this entire collection, compared to a lot of other Stephen King stuff, has a variety of many different things. Um, it has amazing stories. It's one of his, in my opinion, one of his best collection of short fiction, filled with all kinds of magic, dreariness, hope, wonder, love, passion, um, and of course death, and just a lot of things. So if you like stories with like cars that come to life, people being in competitions and getting drunk and using fireworks, the possibility of heroic old folks, then I would definitely give this Stephen King collection like a read. And again, it's called The Bazaar of Bad Dreams. It has a, a page count of 495 pages. It's a short fiction collection. Um, his sixth collection and 10th collection all of overall. It was published November 3rd, 2015. It's got about 20 stories in it. And it's one of those kind of books that will just grab you, and you just have a you can have a very hard time putting it down. I mean, I definitely know that I had a hard time putting it down. So, anyways, again, if you want to give this a read, I definitely recommend it. And I definitely recommend a lot of other Stephen King stuff. I'm going to be posting some more reviews in the next little while. Anything between music, movies, books, pretty much anything that I can think of. Well, thanks for watching, and have a lovely evening, day, afternoon. Have a good one.